Hello, it's Alex, the Bookubus. Today I'm going to be sharing with you everything I read in December, so yeah, wrapping up the last of my reads of 2022. And I had a pretty decent month, as usual, mostly horror, but a couple of other things thrown in there as well. And I started off the month with Wetbones by John Shirley. This is a 90s splatterpunk novel, and this was my pick for Kelly's From Hell book club, which she has been running for quite some time now. Definitely go check her and her channel out if you haven't already. I will of course leave that linked. And yeah, she asked me if I would be interested in picking the December book. So yeah, I went with Wetbones and I really enjoyed it, but I think it was I had some mixed reception in the book club. I think a few people really enjoyed it too. A few people, yeah, it just wasn't for them. So kind of what I expected. I didn't think it would be a crowd pleaser necessarily, but I think, yeah, I'm happy that a few other people enjoyed it. And this one follows a few different characters, so it does jump around quite a bit, but the centre of the story is these couple of different people or groups of people who have the ability to control people's pain and pleasure, and through that make them do certain things. You know, it might be something really horrific that they're doing, but they're getting pleasure from it, that kind of thing. And once the victims are under the control of these kind of people, they can't really escape because they end up, you know, forcing their pain receptors on them, and yeah, they just can't get away because of the things they're going through. So yeah, like I said, we're following a few different characters here and the different ways that they become caught up in this kind of crazy situation. There's definitely some commentary on addiction here within this context of pain and pleasure, and you know, something having a hold over a person and their life, which I thought was pretty interesting and fairly well done. There's definitely some gross things that happen in this book, some gruesome, gnarly splatterpunk goodness. I thought the story itself was pretty well paced, and I liked the jumping around of different characters and seeing how the different threads of the story came together. So yeah, if it sounds like a good time to you, then I would definitely recommend it. I had a really good time with it and I gave it 4 stars. Next up, I read Night School by Caroline B. Cooney, and this is one of the point horror books, and it's one of hers that I haven't really heard anything about. There's a few of her others that are a bit more well-known or popular, but this one, yeah, kind of seems to have fallen through the cracks a little bit. So I had no real expectations going into it. My only thought was because of the US cover, it looks like they look like zombies, so I was expecting something related to that, but it is not that at all. So that cover is quite misleading. At least this one's a bit more vague. So yeah, this one definitely has the Cooney weirdness. She definitely has her own unique style and her own weird ideas, and I really, really like them. I do feel like sometimes her stories kind of lose me a little bit in the way that they wrap up, but I still think this was a really interesting idea. It's about a few different characters who sign up for this night class at school, and yeah, it turns out to be this weird experiment hosted by this mysterious figure, and once they have enrolled, they can't leave, and they're kind of forced into doing some weird experiments which involve them scaring other people. So yeah, it was a really kind of dark and sinister concept. It also jumps around throughout these different characters, so it was cool to hear the perspectives of these kind of very different people from very different kind of cliques and corners of the school that just happened to have come together in this night class. So yeah, this one was a good one. Yeah, another interesting and unique Cooney experience. I gave this one 3.5 stars. Next up, I read a piece of non-fiction. This is a book of Exemplary Deaths by Sturrock, and this was kindly sent to me by the publisher. let me double check, Sutherland House. And this is just a really lovely little book. It's got foil on the spine. It's a lovely little hardback, and it has some illustrations inside as well. Probably didn't pick any of them up in that random flip through, of course, because why would life be that easy? This was a really unique read. Each page basically is devoted to a person and an interesting way that they died, some displaying incredible bravery in the face of death, some just, yeah, a kind of odd way of dying perhaps. And yeah, some of these were really, really touching. Some were very sad. Some were kind of amusing. So yeah, it was a really interesting concept for a book. And I think with it being, yeah, such a well-designed and lovely little book in physical form, I think it would make a really great gift for someone, you know, someone of the morbidly curious kind of persuasion. So yeah, I thought this was a really interesting read. Thank you to the publisher for sending a copy my way. I gave this one 4 stars. And this month I actually read 2 other books that were sent to me for review, which is, yeah, not typical for me in a month to be reading that many books for review, but yeah, they all just kind of happened around the same time. Thoughts are my own honest opinions, of course. And so the next book that I read for review was The Stone Serpent by Nicholas Kaufmann, and the author very kindly sent me a copy of this. Thank you, Nick. And this is the follow-up to The Hungry Earth, which is a book I read and reviewed last year and really enjoyed. And so this follows the same main character, Dr. Laura Powell. She is the medical examiner in this small town. And in the first book, The Hungry Earth, yeah, we're dealing with this crazy fungus related situation. And the second book, The Stone Serpent, has its own story. So in one sense, you don't have to have read the first one to just be able to pick this one up and dive straight into it. But there are some spoilers for what happens to certain characters in the first book. So personally, I would read the first one, you know, before the second one. I just really liked, yeah, returning to these characters, having known what they had been through in the first book. Anyway, The Stone Serpent is about a body that turns up for Dr. Laura Powell to perform an autopsy on, and the body has been completely petrified. It's like stone. And yeah, she's trying to figure out exactly what could have caused that. And her investigations lead her to meet up with this religious cult that lives in the area. And also there's this kind of very high-tech pharmaceutical company in the area too that she is also looking into. So yeah, she meets up with various other characters and becomes, yeah, caught up in some different stories relating to these people in order to find out what happened to this petrified body at the beginning of the story. And as the title might suggest, there are also a lot of snakes here. So yeah, snakes are definitely a big part of the story as well. It throws you into the story from page 1, no hanging around, we just get going straight away, which I really liked. And I think it's a really great balance of having enough time spent with the characters for some character development and relationships to form and progress, but also it always felt like the story was moving along at a really good pace. You know, there was never any boring moments, and also, you know, there are some action-packed moments as well, especially towards the end as, yeah, certain things play out. So yeah, this was a really great, solid read, thoroughly enjoyed it, and I gave it 4 stars. Next up is something a little bit different. I read a middle grade book. This is The Ghost of Ernie P by Betty Wren Wright. This is the first book of hers that I've read, and I really enjoyed it. This is about a young boy called Jeff, and there was a boy called Ernie who started at his school sometime before the beginning of this story. But Ernie wasn't a particularly nice kid, but he had befriended Jeff, and Jeff was kind of forced into being friends with him. And at the start of the story, we find out that Ernie has died in a very sudden accident. And Jeff is feeling, you know, mixed emotions about this. Obviously, he's sad that this kid has died, but also he kind of feels like somewhat relieved to no longer have him in his life. But it seems like Ernie hasn't quite left Jeff alone just yet, because Jeff feels like he's being haunted by the ghost of Ernie. And yeah, this was a pretty unique take on a kind of haunting story, I feel like, especially for a children's book. I think the other element that I'll mention, which I don't think is too spoilery, I think it actually might give you more of a reason to want to pick this up maybe. So not only is there the ghost haunting aspect of the story, but there's also a witch element in the story too. So that I thought was a really interesting and unique combination. I'm not going to go into any more specifics about what happens with those two elements, but it made for a really unique read. And yeah, I just liked how the story played out, and I thought it had a really cute ending. So yeah, this was just a ton of fun, and I gave it 4 stars. Next up is another book that I read for review. This was Black Market Blood Drive by Matt Wall, fellow YouTuber. A little while ago he had sent me a few of his books in case I was interested in reading or reviewing any of them, and I decided to go with the vampire one because I love a good vampire story. So I picked up Black Market Blood Drive. This one was also a ton of fun and was also a really quick read. It's following this guy called Duke who gets out of jail, and he immediately heads for this like strip club / dive bar, you know, looking for some good times. But he stumbles upon something he was not expecting to find, and that's this underground clan of vampires. He becomes, caught up in their goings on and ends up working for them. But yeah, opens up a whole can of worms for his life outside of jail, and yeah, also a potential love interest, and yeah, all of that good stuff. So yeah, there's plenty of violence and blood and plenty of nudity and sex also. So yeah, it was a pretty fun combination. There's also a lot of humour in here as well. It made me chuckle quite a few times, so that was great. And yeah, it was just a kind of quick fun read, you know, a bit from dusk till dawn type of thing if I were to think of one thing to compare it to. But yeah, the story itself is quite different, but it has some similar vibes in some respects, I guess. So yeah, if you like that, you might want to check this one out. And yeah, I enjoyed it. I gave it 3.5 stars. Okay, 2 more books to talk about. Next up is The Seventh Mansion by Maryse Meijer. This is one that I had heard Kathy Koja talk highly of, so I was very excited to finally pick this one up. Absolutely love this cover. And it's about this teenage boy called Z who moves with his father to a fairly remote place to live after some kind of troubles that went on previously. So they're kind of moving away to try and start afresh. And Z meets a couple of girls at school, and they have a common interest in like environmental activism. And one night the 3 of them break into a mink farm in order to release the mink, but they get caught. The 2 girls manage to get away, but Z does not. And so yeah, he's now kind of on treacherous ground with his family and his school. And anyway, in Z's spare time, he is becoming more involved in like a local activism group, and also he's spending a lot of time outdoors in the local woods. And at one point he finds this church in the woods which holds the relic of a Catholic saint, basically like an entire skeleton, and he decides to take it home with him. And so so there's some very interesting and unique elements going on in this story, which I really, really loved. I thought it was a really unique read. The writing style is also very interesting. I think it's not going to be for everyone, probably. I think, if you like Kathy Koja's style, you might like this too, or vice versa. If you don't, maybe you won't get on with this. I don't know. Obviously, I can't guarantee one way or another, but it does have a style of its own that, you know, might not work for everyone. But it absolutely worked for me. I really enjoyed it. And it was just, yeah, such a great reading experience overall. It really had me hooked in. The writing style, the story elements, the characters, I thought it was all really well done. Yeah, it was just it just had its own unique vibe to the whole thing that really stood out to me and that I really, really liked. So yeah, I definitely need to read more by this author. And yeah, I gave this one 4 stars. And then last up, I read The Angel Maker, if I can get a good position that isn't too glary, by Alex North. This is a book that I received in a Creepy Crate a couple of months ago, and it's a thriller, which is something I haven't really read a ton of these days. I did go through a phase of thrillers some years ago, and I think I just got really burnt out with them, and then I moved on to horror, and it's just been pretty much horror 24/7 since then. But yeah, I was intrigued enough by the premise of this one to give it a go, and I thought it was pretty good. It didn't blow me away, I'll be honest. So this is about, one of the main characters is a woman called Katie, and back when she was a teenager, her younger brother was attacked by this guy. The brother survived, but his life kind of went off the rails at that point. He became addicted to drugs and, you know, has been homeless on and off, and they have had a strained relationship, and in the past couple of years she has not heard from him at all. And then there's another character who is this old wealthy man who has been murdered, and there's a detective who is investigating the case. There are a bunch of other characters as well, but those are kind of the main ones to start off with without getting into any more spoilers. I think this one, it was quite convoluted, honestly. Like, the story was pretty convoluted. There are a lot of elements to it, a lot of moving parts that I don't feel quite came together very well. It jumps around a lot, not only with characters but also time periods. There were enough things that had me interested enough to keep reading it, but I do think that I never really became invested in the story or in any of the characters in particular. It was more just reading it to find out, you know, exactly what was going to happen at the end. And yeah, I don't know if it left me completely satisfied by the end of it. Like I say, it was an okay read. It was good. But yeah, it didn't really blow me away. So I ended up giving this one 3 stars. So those were all of the books that I read in December. Not a bad reading month to finish the year off with. Do let me know if you've read any of these. I would love to hear what you thought. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully I will see you again in my next video. Bye!